Anyway, so pre-rifle classification, as mentioned, are for risk, injury, failure, loss, and end stage. Two parameters are very important in order to classify your patients with the different category or criteria. And the two very important parameters would be your urine output and of course your creatinine clearance. Now for the end stage, of course, so I mentioned earlier, there's a time period, persistent failure for more than 12 weeks or 3 months, and that is already classified under chronic kidney disease. Okay? Now, another way of categorizing or staging acute kidney injury is based on the KDIGO staging classification. And this is very simple. That would be stage 1, 2, and 3. And two important parameters for this would just be a simple serum creatinine plus again your urine output. So again, when you become doctors or interns, always ask for the urine output. Okay? Every day or even few patients who will be manifesting with acute kidney injury. So for serum creatinine, that would be 1.5 to 1.9 times from your baseline. And of course, stage 2 would be 2 to 2.9 times. And lastly, for stage 3, that would be 3 times, okay, increase from the baseline. Another way of classifying your acute kidney injury would be your acute kidney injury network AKIN. So tatlo yan, KDIGO, AKIN, and your P-rifle. Okay? What we usually would use would be the P-rifle and the KDIGO classification. Okay? This AKIN is nice to know that there is such a classification for patients with acute kidney injury. Again, that would be stage 1 to 3. And of course, serum creatinine and urine output would be two very important parameters in the classification of your acute kidney injury. Now, let's start with the pathophysiology. Now, acute kidney injury can be due to 3 very important categories. That would be your pre-renal, intrinsic, or your renal, and lastly would be your post-renal. When you talk about or pre-renal, the underlying problem is volume. Somehow, there would be inadequate perfusion to your kidneys. And this is said to be exemplified by your patients who would be having diarrhea or even vomiting, who will come to your clinic or at the emergency room who are said to be dehydrated. Or pwedeng sa OR, nag-o-opera, nagkaroon ng so much blood loss. So these are just examples of patients who will be having pre-renal AKI. Now, how about your intrinsic? When you talk about intrinsic AKI, that is a direct insult to the renal parenchyma. And this is exemplified by patients who will be having glomerular diseases or glomerulonephritis. And of course, for patients who would be having infection or severe infection, and of course some medications that can cause an intrinsic type of acute kidney injury. So basically, it's the renal parenchyma that is said to be affected in patients with intrinsic. Now, how about your post-renal AKI? Your post-renal AKI would be more of a problem of structural abnormality. Okay? The kidney is functioning well. Nagpuproduce siya ng urine. But the problem is, may obstruction dun sa flow ng urine. So, again, that is apparently, well, we usually would refer patients with post-renal AKI to your friend, of course, pediatric urologist. And that would, of course, that would entail correction through surgery. Okay? Again, the kidney here is functioning well. But the urine cannot be excreted because somewhere along the way, there is an obstruction. Pwedeng kidney stone, pwedeng stenosis, okay? And again, that will be addressed by your pediatric urologist. Now, very important with regards to the renal hemodynamics of patients with AKI is that the dominant factor in almost all of these 3 categories, pre-renal, intrinsic, and post-renal, would be, of course, your vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction is said to be the dominant factor as to the, of course, evolution of your acute kidney injury. And this is said to be influenced by the different renal hemodynamic factors. Like, for example, your RAAS. I'm sure you've encountered your renal angiotensin system in your physiology, wherein this is said to be triggered in patients with hypovolemia or decreased blood pressure. Okay? You also have your prostaglandin, adenosine, down to your nitric oxide. So just like what I mentioned, okay? Okay. When you do have your acute kidney injury, to start with an insult to your kidney or to your tubules. That would end to stimulation of the release of your vasoactive compounds that were mentioned earlier. The release of which would cause an increase in the vascular resistance. So again, with that increase in the vascular resistance, what happens is that there will be a decrease in the renal blood flow, causing a decrease in the glomerular filtration rate. Okay? So basically, it's the vasoactive compounds that is said to be, that would play a role in the evolution of your acute kidney injury. That's why you have your vasoconstriction, again, as a dominant factor. Now, for your renin-angiotensin system, as mentioned earlier, this is said to be triggered in patients with decreased blood pressure or volume problem or dehydration. And I'm sure you still remember that the stimulation of your RAS system will what? Increase sodium reabsorption, hindi ba? Okay? Kung nasaan ang sodium, nandoon yung water mo. Of course, in order to regulate that, bumabagsak na yung blood pressure mo, what happens is that there would be vasoconstriction. Okay? But again, with this vasoconstriction brought about by decreased blood pressure and decreased volume or hypovolemia, all of this will lead to a decrease in the renal blood flow. And prolongation of this situation. Like for example, patients will be coming to the emergency room, sasabihin, nagtatae po yung anak ko. And then ang history, sasabihin ng nanay, kanina lang po mga 3 hours ago, there were 5 episodes of diarrhea or watery diarrhea. But when you saw the patient, severely dehydrated siya. Okay? So personally, well, as doctors, you won't take that information as a true information, di ba? Kasi parang 2 hours na nagtae, severely dehydrated na yung pasyente mo. Okay? And when these patients will come to the emergency room, of course, you will have to manage them. But again, if the patient fails to respond to your initial management of volume replacement, hindi siya nag-respond after an hour, bolus kayo ng bolus, no? Then we can, well, conclude that your patient has been dehydrated for the longest period of time. Baka more than 8 hours nang dehydrated ang pasyente. Hindi lang 3 or 2 hours. So that means, okay, your pre-renal, na initially, pre-renal siya because of volume depletion. But since the patient was not corrected immediately, your pre-renal evolved into your intrinsic kidney injury na. So, very important will be the response of your patient from your initial management if you are thinking that your patient has pre-renal. Kasi kung immediately na address yung problema, there should be a reversal. Patient should have a urine output 15 minutes after an IV bolus. Pero kung hindi, that will be a problem. Okay? So that will be for your renin-angiotensin system. Another very important substance should be your prostaglandin. This is important in patients who are addicted to pain relievers, di ba? Ang mga pain relievers nito. So basically, your prostaglandin is said to be a vasodilator. But since most of the pain relievers are said to be inhibits your prostaglandin, so wala na yung magdadilate if too much of these pain relievers are said to be given. So what would predominate would be vasoconstriction. So that medication could lead to your acute kidney injury. Okay? Next would be your adenosines. Your adenosine is said to be a product of the catabolism of your nucleotide, and I'm sure you still remember your biochemistry on what nucleotide is. And this nucleotide is said to be brought about by injury to your cells. Hindi ba? Sa mga may infection. Okay? O pwede rin medication that can injure your cells. And this could lead to, of course, your production of your adenosine, which is said to be a potent vasoconstrictor. Again, that would compromise your renal blood flow. Next would be your endothelin. Endothelin is said to be an amino acid peptide. And usually, this is said to be released in cases of hypoxia. Ito naman, this endothelin are usually released, sabi natin hypoxia. So this would be more common in newborns or neonates who would be having difficult delivery. Na nagkaroon ng yung cord nasa kalunyag nahihirapang ilabas yung nanay. So somehow, oxygen is said to be deprived. And that could lead to release of your endothelin, which is said to be, again, a potent vasoconstrictor. That's why for neonates, of course, very important that you monitor the urine output during the first 24 or even 48 hours. Kasi talaga yung, when we usually would ask our resident, umihina ba yung baby? Of course, yung time frame namin doon would be 48 hours. Kung 24 hours lang, o sige, let's wait. Pero kung 48 hours nang walang ihi, may problema yung pasyente natin. Okay? Next would be your nitric oxide. Okay? We all know that your nitric oxide is what? A dilator or a vasoconstrictor? Nitric oxide? Dilate yan, hindi ba? Okay. So sabi niyo, Doc, vasoconstrictor, nitric oxide yan, dilate yan. So ano namang situation that would lead to, of course, affectation of your nitric oxide? This will be in patients with severe, anong tawag dito? Severe sepsis or infection. Okay? Anong nangyayari sa mga pasyente na nagkakaroon ng severe infection? What happens is that kung may nitric oxide, may dilate. Okay? That's why in patients with severe infection, what happens is nagkakaroon sila ng septic shock. Hindi ba? Kasi nag-dilate. Ang baba ng ang baba ng blood pressure niya. Pangit ang blood pressure. Definitely. But remember that before your patient will go into full dilation or septic shock, and this you should experience during your monitoring sa hospital, is that sa simula, magpapasa-constrict niya. So akala niyo, yung severe infection ng pasyente ninyo, gumanda yung blood pressure. Not knowing na nagko-compensate yung katawan natin because papunta na siya sa vasodilation at magsha-shock na yung pasyente natin. So don't be relaxed when you see patients with severe infection na initially, ay pumapangit, nagsa-septic shock, tapos sasabihin mo, ay gumaganda na ulit, gumaganda na yung blood pressure. Don't be so complacent. You have to monitor this patient kasi once na sabihin na natin gumanda, na nag-vasoconstrict. Pero pag hindi na control yung infection, tuloy-tuloy na yung magsa-septic shock. So again, because of this vasoconstriction, tapos after which vasodilate naman, that could lead to your acute kidney injury due to, of course, a decrease in the renal blood flow. Kaya yung may mga sepsis or severe infection, tumataas ang creatinine levels natin dyan. Okay? Now, as mentioned, your pre-renal is said to be due to a decrease in the renal blood flow, which can be attributed to patients with hypovolemia or patients with dehydration. Okay? Take note that initially, of course, as mentioned earlier, for patients with pre-renal, there is no evidence of parenchymal damage or renal damage. Plain and simple renal blood flow. Okay, that's why reversible siya once adequately treated immediately. Okay? But again, if that will be persistent, and of course, if the patient will not be addressed immediately with the problem of hypovolemia, that pre-renal will lead to injuries. Okay? And this is said to be monitored by checking the urine output and the blood pressure. Urine output talaga ang importante. Okay? Later, when we go to the management of patients with AKI, you will see, talagang hindi nag-respond kasi nakailang bolus na tayo ng IV fluids. Okay? Now, for intrinsic, I mentioned it's more of a parenchymal damage. Glomerulonephritis, which will be lectured for next week ata ang glomerular diseases naman. Okay? Which is exemplified by glomerulonephritis. Glomerulonephritis is such a very broad disease kasi marami ang post-strep, nephrotic, alcohols, marami. Okay? So, napakaraming causes or types of your glomerulonephritis which can lead to your intrinsic renal injury. Now, the most common cause, take note, you must read this, of your intrinsic kidney injury or intrinsic renal injury is your hemolytic uremic syndrome. These are patients who will be presenting with severe diarrhea. Okay, na-dehydrate siya. But, of course, when you request for laboratories that would make your diagnosis of your hemolytic uremic syndrome, that will be the extreme of abnormalities like super high creatinine level, super deranged electrolytes, okay? And of course, problems with regards to your platelets, so may thrombocytopenia. And that would be your hemolytic uremic syndrome, which is said to be diarrhea caused by your E. coli. Please take note of this strain of your E. coli causing your hemolytic uremic syndrome. Okay? Now, other causes of your intrinsic renal disease would be your acute tubular necrosis. So what would be your acute tubular necrosis? So this is brought about by medications or drugs that are usually given to your patients. And very notorious with regards to a drug or antibiotic that would lead to ATN or acute tubular necrosis would be your aminoglycoside. Aminoglycoside, which are exemplified by amikacin, gentamicin, tobramycin, netilmicin. Okay? So, for young doctors like you, I'm sure you encountered this in your pharmacology, and you were able to classify among these aminoglycoside, which is the least nephrotoxic and the most nephrotoxic. That you should know. So that when giving this aminoglycoside, especially for neonates, you should give the least nephrotoxic of this aminoglycoside. Because these aminoglycosides are said to be, again, very notorious in causing your ATM. Okay? So what does it do, no? So when a patient is said to be given with an aminoglycoside, especially for the neonates, okay? Nagkamali ka, napataas mo yung dose ng aminoglycoside mo, o walang pera yung pasyente kasi the least nephrotoxic would be expensive. So nabigay mo na gentamicin kasi mura siya. But your patient responded differently. Instead na gumaling siya, medyo nagka-problema, umihi ng dugo. Okay? So, what happens is that there will be sloughing off of the epithelium of your tubules, causing an obstruction in the tubules itself. That would be basically the problem in patients with acute tubular ATN or acute tubular necrosis brought about by your aminoglycoside. So, anong treatment? Okay? Now, first of all, siguro you would think, ito ba't binigyan ng gentamicin? Okay? Kasi hindi naman lahat nagkakaroon ng acute ATN na nabigyan ng aminoglycoside. And then you would ask siguro, bakit hindi naman binigyan o nag-request ng creatinine level? Okay? Remember, these are common in the neonate. We usually would give antibiotics if you are anticipating, o hindi naman na-anticipate, you are thinking of a sepsis at the time that the patient was delivered. Especially if the maternal history ay medyo questionable. Masabihin, nagkaroon po ng UTI yung nanay at the time na deliver. Naglilik na pa yung bag of waters. O nilalagnat yung nanay at the time that the patient was, at the time that the baby was delivered. So basically, you should be aggressive in giving your antibiotics because one of the considerations would be a neonatal sepsis at the time that the baby was delivered. So, standard therapy, you could give ampicillin and gentamicin or ampicillin and amikacin. But of course, creatinine determination of the neonate will not be part of the laboratory examination during the first 24 hours of life. So, kailan ba dapat nagpapa-creatinine? And why not request for a creatinine level during the first 24 hours of life? Primarily because it is more of the maternal creatinine level that will be detected during the first 24 hours or even during the first 72 hours of life of the baby. It is more of a reflection of the maternal creatinine. Kaya yung trick question dyan, creatinine was determined during the first 24 hours, something like that. And that should not be done. Okay? Because again, it is a reflection of the maternal creatinine. That's why we usually would request creatinine on the third or fourth day of life. So usually, for patients who were given aminoglycoside, talagang standard that you request for a creatinine on the third or fourth day of life to check kung tumataas yung creatinine brought about by the giving of your aminoglycoside. In the event na pangit, oh my God, okay, pataas ang creatinine. Remember that your acute tubular necrosis, you will set up, doon wala bang symptoms niya. Okay? Your ATN is usually a non-oliguric AKI. So, ibig sabihin, minomonitor mo yung ihi, maganda na may ihi, kaya hindi ka magdududa o mag-iisip na this patient is having ATN or acute kidney injury. Kasi hindi yung baby. Okay? You only determine that your patient has AKI for patients who are given aminoglycoside once you requested your creatinine level on the third or fourth day of life. And if that will happen, of course, it's either you adjust the dose or discontinue the antibiotic shift into another antibiotics. Okay? So please remember, creatinine is never determined during the first 24 hours of life. Okay? So that would be for acute tubular necrosis. ATN is a non-oliguric AKI. Next would be your tumor lysis syndrome. From the word tumor, okay? So this patient, this AKI, is seen in patients who will undergo chemotherapy. So may meron silang malignancy, and these patients will undergo chemotherapy. And what is bad about chemotherapy? Hindi siya selective. Pati normal cells, sinisira niya. Okay? Anong meron ang cells? Ang cells ay may nucleus. Okay? Sa nucleus, anong meron? That would lead to uric acid and product of uric sorry. Okay. So basically, uric acid is said to be increased in patients who will undergo chemotherapy brought about by the destruction of the normal cells, or specifically sabihin na natin, yung mga WBC na yan in patients with leukemia, or even for patients with any other type of cancer. Meron yan nucleus. Hindi ba? May DNA yan. Okay? And the end product of which would be accumulation of your uric acid. That is why, before patients will undergo chemotherapy, two things are usually done to these patients. One is hinahydrate ang pasyente. Okay? At pangalawa, ina-alkalinize ang urine. Kasi di ba, ang uric acid is said to be crystallized under acidic pH. Pero kung alkaline ang urine mo, hindi siya mag-crystallize, hindi siya magbubuo. So, nandoon siya sa liquid state. So those are two very important things that should be done before, of course, giving your chemotherapy for patients with malignancy to prevent tumor lysis syndrome. Kasi itong uric acid crystals na ito, pwede na naman mag-obstruct sa tubules. That would lead to acute kidney injury. Okay? Next. How about your acute interstitial? Okay? To differentiate your acute tubular necrosis to interstitial, ito symptomatic to. Okay? And this is said to be due to an allergic reaction or hypersensitivity. So drugs are said to be implicated for patients with acute interstitial nephritis. So symptoms like, of course, dugo sa ihi, okay, pyuria, arthralgia, or symptoms that are said to be relatable to a hypersensitivity reaction. Okay? That could lead to your acute interstitial nephritis. Drugs like, of course, pain relievers, antibiotics, all of which could lead to your acute interstitial nephritis. Okay? And lastly would be your cortical necrosis. Ito yung pinakapangit pa, no? Although this is rare, no? But these patients who would be having cortical necrosis are patients that should be monitored even after you are able to win this patient. Gumaling na siya during baby siya, But these patients should be monitored because these patients with cortical necrosis are patients who would evolve to chronic kidney disease. Baka mag-chronic kidney disease pa. Okay? And of course, risk factors that could lead to your cortical necrosis would be, of course, yung delivery itself. Hindi maganda yung maternal history. Hindi maganda yung delivery history ng patient or birth history ng pasyente natin. Abruption placenta, hypoxia, of course, septic shock, HUS, all of this could lead to your cortical necrosis. And of course, since this is said to be, sabihin na natin worse o pinakapangit, okay, among the mentioned ATN, interstitial tumor necrosis, lahat ng symptoms of kidney injury can be seen in patients with cortical necrosis. Like for example, oliguria, hypertension, edema, okay, hematuria, pyorrhea, lahat. All of this can be seen in patients with cortical necrosis. Now, this is just, of course, comparison of ATN and cortical necrosis. So as you can see, ATN, I mentioned, it is more of a non-oliguria, AKI. Kung mag-oliguria lang siya, short duration lang siya. You won't see any hematuria, very rare in patients. With ATN, and when you do your ultrasound, namamagalang yung kidneys mo. But for cortical necrosis, I mentioned that all of the symptoms or manifestations of AKI can be seen in patients with cortical. And what is significant is that your ultrasound, comparing it to your ATN, seems to be normal. Okay? That is why I mentioned earlier that for patients with acute cortical necrosis, these are patients that should be monitored. Kasi makikita mo, lumiliit pa rin yung kidneys niya. So, magko-chronic kidney siya. Okay? So you have to monitor this patient. Kung mag-guarded ang patient, ang prognosis ng pasyente mayroong cortical necrosis. Okay? Now, how about your post-renal AKI? There are a lot of structural abnormality or anatomic abnormality that can lead to your post-renal. So you could have your posterior urethral valve, your UPG obstruction, okay? Pwede ka rin merong double collecting tubules, neurogenic bladder, all of which, okay, pertaining to anatomic abnormality that could lead to a problem in the urine flow. Again, gumagawa po ng ihi ang kidneys. Ang problema hindi niya nailalabas because of an obstruction somewhere along the way of your genitourinary tract. Okay, that's why you have to refer this to your pediatric urologist. Okay? So these are just some of the causes of your post-renal AKI. Now, your post-renal AKI is not only a problem of the genitourinary tract. If there would be mass or malignancy outside of the genitourinary tract that somehow would obstruct the flow of the urine, that is also considered as a post-renal AKI. Okay? So hindi siya nakasenter lang sa kidneys, but a mass outside the genitourinary tract can lead to a post-renal AKI. Now, very important for doctors would be, of course, history of patients who would be having acute kidney injury. Okay? So that you would know, these were my consideration based on the history. Okay? Since it mentioned, of course, the different causes of your acute kidney injury based on the category of pre-renal, intrinsic, and post-renal, somehow, it would be easier for you to know, no? Like for example, for pre-renal, ano sabi ko? Patients who will be coming to your clinic or the emergency room who will be having history of diarrhea, vomiting, or any volume loss. Nagdugo. Okay? So these are cases of pre-renal. Of course, if that will be the case, you have to ask for the urine output lalo na sa mga small babies, o babies, small naman talaga sila, babies that will be having diarrhea kasi mabilis silang ma-dehydrate talaga. Okay? Now, for intrinsic, for history, these are patients who would be having, ang initial na mga history nito, nagmanas, nag-edema ang pasyente. Nagkaroon ng tea-colored urine. Yan yung mga history ng mga pasyente. May mga intrinsic AKI. O pasyenteng dumating sa emergency room na mataas ang blood pressure na. Okay? So hindi ibig sabihin na pag dumating sa ER yan na hypertensive, number one in your consideration should be a renal problem. Yan talaga. Because sa statistically, sinabi sa inyo ito sa lecture ng hematuria, hypertension, hindi ba last week? Hypertension, number one, renal, cardio, endo, yung mga pheochromocytoma. These are causes of hypertension in children. Natatandaan niyo ba yung last week? Okay? That's why most of the patients pediatric patients with hypertension are usually referred to a pediatric urologist. Okay? So, again, aside from the edema, of course, very important in the history will be drugs taken. Gamot bang binigay? Lagi yan. Anong mga gamot ang binigay? Because pwede siyang ATM or acute interstitial nephritis. Okay? And of course, for the post-renal, well, ano nga bang history ng post-renal lang? Simple, hindi umihip. And then when you do your physical examination, ang laki ng tiyan. Hindi ba? Yung pala may obstruction. Yung bladder pala, lumaki na. Okay? O malaki na yung kidney itself, wherein meron na siyang tinatawag na hydronephrosis. Okay? Now, ano nga ba yung hydronephrosis na yan? Ano nga ba yung hydronephrosis? Dilation na o dilatation na ng mga calyces, okay, ng renal pelvis, brought about by obstruction somewhere along the way, doon sa genitourinary tract. So, drawing nga natin. Chocolate. Walang choke, imagine niyo yan. So, yung kidney, di ba sa loob ng kidney may mga calyces, pelvis, okay? So, what you would see sa ultrasound, yung calyces, pelvis, renal pelvis na yun ay said to be dilated. So, pwedeng initially, kung hindi pa ganun ka-dilated, yung ultrasound result, pwedeng sabihin pelvocalictation. Pelvo from pelvis, calictation for calyces. Dilated yan. Or kung talagang dilated na, they will label it as hydronephrosis. Okay? And these are usually seen or findings in patients with post-renal AKI. Okay? Kasi may barangan. Now, considering that, of course, you have a very good history, and you talk of, baka pre-renal to or intrinsic to. So, of course, the next thing that will come to your mind would be, ano ba yung mga laboratory na dapat kong i-request, no? Of course, your request, laboratory request, will depend on your history and physical examination, of course. No? Hindi ka naman pwede magpa-CT scan dahil lang hindi umihip. Hindi siya dekahon. So, all your examination or laboratory examination will depend on your history and physical examination. Like for example, for patients with pre-renal, walang output. Nagtae ang pasyente. Nagsuka ang pasyente. Would CBC be helpful? Siyempre, helpful din yun kasi what you would see would be hemoconcentration, which is said to be a finding in patients who are said to be dehydrated. Okay? Pwede rin mataas ang WBC for patients who will be having infection, who will manifest with diarrhea or even vomiting. So CBC would be important. Okay? But of course, if that would be intrinsic, okay, iba naman ang CBC findings natin. CBC findings in patient with intrinsic or may kidney damage talaga or renal damage talaga, renal parenchymal damage talaga, may have a delusional type of anemia or anemia itself. But yung true anemia would be more for chronic kidney. Okay? But of course, for yung mga tinatawag na delusional anemia na yun, this would be very common for patients who will be having post-strep or post-infectious glomerulonephritis. Okay? That will be lectured to you next week. Okay? So, you do not have true anemia, meron tinatawag na delusional. That's why not all patients who would be having anemia, o sabihin mo 9 or 10 yung hemoglobin niya, but on the background, you know that this patient has post-infectious or post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis. Hindi ka naman bibigay ng blood transfusion kaagad. Hindi ba? It's not like that. Okay? Actually, sa renal o sa nephrology, nagbibigay talaga ng blood transfusion or PAC-RBC transfusion if your hemoglobin is around 7 grams or 8 grams for some groups. Pero kung 9 or 10, think of a delusional type, especially for patients with acute kidney injury. Okay? What else? Of course, your thrombocytopenia, sa WCDC rin, and platelet, especially if you're thinking of hemolytic uremic syndrome. Di ba? You have thrombocytopenia. Okay? Now, electrolytes would be very important for both intrinsic and pre-renal. Of course, for your pre-renal, you might have, because of the diarrhea, you might have a decrease in your sodium as well as your potassium. Okay? But that can be, of course, different for patient with intrinsic. Pwede may hyponatremia ka, pero may hyperkalemia ka naman sa intrinsic kidney disease. Okay? Now, paano nga ba hinahandle ng kidneys ang potassium? The major mechanism by which your kidney would handle your sodium and your potassium is through what mechanism? Di ba yung, ano ba mga mechanism niya? Filtration, reabsorption, secretion, excretion. So your sodium is mainly handled by your kidneys through, natatandaan niyo ba yung renal anemia? Wala kasi CHOP. So glomerulus, proximal, lupofenily distal, collecting tube. And majority of your sodium are said to be reabsorbed at the level of your proximal, as high as 90%, 75 to 90% of your sodium. So with that alone, you would know that your kidney would handle your sodium primarily through tubular reabsorption. Okay? Pero, ang potassium pa, that will be more on the extreme side. Kung ang sodium ay nasa proximal, ang potassium ay nasa more on the collecting tubules. And this is said to be being handled by your kidney mainly by tubular secretion. Okay? Nasa lecture ko yun sa tubular mga electrolytes. So anyway, so that you should know. No? So either hyper K, hypo K, but of course for kidney, more on hyper K yan. Pero kung may mga tubular abnormalities, yung mga distal and proximal tubules, no? RDA, no? So that would be hypokalemia. So that you have to know kung ano ba talaga ang problema. So with the examinations or laboratory examinations that you would request, you would know kung anong cause ng kidney problem. Now, you would request for an arterial blood gas, of course. Even for patients who are dehydrated, you would expect na meron siya metabolic acidosis. But for dehydrated patient, hindi naman right there and then that you are going to correct the acidosis by giving your bicarbonate. No, it's not like that. For patients with pre-renal, the first thing that you should do, knowing that it is pre-renal, is to hydrate the patient. Okay? With hydration, your acidosis will be there. Pero if your patient is hindi naman dehydrated at intrinsic AKI siya, at metabolic acidosis siya, then that will be the time that you manage your patient by giving your sodium bicarbonate. Okay? And of course, very important, of course, would be your BUN creatinine, just like what we mentioned earlier, that when you do categorize your AKI, one of the parameters would be your serum creatinine or even your creatinine clearance. That's why your creatinine should be part of the examination. Siyempre, kidney, the creatinine talaga dapat. Next would be, ito for ano to, intrinsic to, more for glomerular diseases to. Your complementary ASO, your ANA, your ANCA, all of this will be requested if you are thinking of a glomerular disease. Depende kung ano iniisip mo. If that will be post-infectious or yung systemic lupus, then you request for ANA. Mga post-trip, C3, complementary is very important for patients with glomerular disease. It's either a decreased complementary or a normal complementary. Okay? For patients with glomerular nephritis or even with systemic lupus erythematosus, you would expect, okay, that your complementary is said to be depressed or decreased. Okay? And what would be the significance of a decreased complementary? Complementary and decreased complementary only signifies the activity of the disease itself. So ibig sabihin, very active lang. For example, for patients who would be having systemic lupus erythematosus, pag mababa ang complementary, ibig sabihin active na active yung sakit niya. Pag sinabi kong active na active yung sakit, Diyos ko lahat ng symptoms nakikita mo ngayon sa kanya. Okay, minama na siya, maputla siya, okay, nilalagnat siya, sa something like that. So it pertains, it signifies the activity of the disease for your complementary. And of course, your urinalysis. But your urinalysis is only useful kung umiihi ang pasyente. Paano kung hindi na umiihi? Ito wala kang urinalysis. Diba? Ang magiging basehan mo na lang would be your creatinine level. But again, urinalysis should be part of the workup itself. Bakit? Ano bang, kasi very simple lang naman ang urinalysis, di ba? When you do your urinalysis, and I'm sure some of you are medical technologists, you have your physical examination, you have your microscopic examination, and you have your chemical examination. All of this definitely will help you determine kung ano talaga yung sakit ng pasyente mo. Okay? Why? Because very important for a simple urinalysis is a microscopic examination. Ano ba ang cause ng kunyari? Hindi umiihi o kumunti na iihi niya. But you were able to see RBC CAS. RBC CAS would be more will be more for intrinsic agad yan. Pag may RBC CAS. Kasi may hematuria yung pasyente. Okay? Intrinsic yan. It could be any glomerular disease. Okay? But of course, for mga granular or hyaline yan, baka dehydrated lang ang pasyente mo dyan. Kulang lang sa tubig. But RBC CAS would signify a glomerular disease. So aside from that microscopic examination, there are other parameters that can be useful by doing a simple urinalysis. No? In order to determine whether you are dealing with pre-renal or even intrinsic AKI. So one would be your specific gravity. Since for pre-renal, dehydrated siya, so you would expect concentrated in urine. That would be more than 1.020 yung specific gravity niya. Okay? For intrinsic naman, ang problema, di ba? Renal, anong tawag doon? Renal parenchymal damage to. So pwedeng hindi na siya talaga nagpuproduce ng urine. Okay? Next would be urine osmolarity. So from pre-renal, since mataas ang niya, ang specific gravity niya, so basically mataas din ang urine osmolarity niya. That would be more than 500. And of course, the reverse is true with your intrinsic. Because somehow may problema na sa tubules mo. Yung mga, I'm sure, hanggang ngayon dito pa rin kayo sa mga countercurrent mechanism of your kidney. So somehow, your electrolytes, your solutes, with regards to the absorption and secretion, may problema na yan. Okay? That's why the urine osmolarity can be decreased. Next would be your urine sodium. You could request for the urine sodium. And for urine sodium, usually for patients with pre-renal, that would be less than 20 milliequivalents per liter. But for intrinsic, medyo mataas. That would be 40 milliequivalents per liter. Okay? Now, remember that this FEN sodium percentage, that is fractional excretion of your sodium. This is very important because this is the most discriminatory test to determine whether you are dealing with your pre-renal or intrinsic. And that will depend on the percentage that you will get based on the computation. Later pakita natin. And of course, you have your BUN and creatinine. Okay, ratio of more than 20 and of course less than 24 intrinsic. So let's go now to the fractional excretion of your sodium. Okay? Baka malito kayo dyan. Okay? Para hindi kayo malito, As you can see the equation, urine sodium. Ano yung urine sodium? UNA. Una. So first and foremost, una ang susulat mo. Urine sodium. Kung may urine sodium, multiplied by your plasma creatinine. And of course, the reverse would be for your denominator. Urine sodium sa taas, so plasma sodium naman sa baba. Times, of course, your urine creatinine times 100. So para hindi kayo malito, una, for your fractional expression of your sodium. Okay? Una, multiplied by plasma creatinine or by plasma sodium multiplied by urine creatinine times 100. Okay? So yung percentage, of course, will determine whether you are dealing with intrinsic or pre-renal type of your AKI. So aside from the urinalysis, of course, you could request for your chest X-ray. Okay? Chest X-ray may show signs of pulmonary congestion, presence of fluids, or even signs of cardiomegaly. Okay? And of course, kidney ultrasound will be very important. Okay? Not only for post-renal, even for intrinsic. Importante ito. Because patient may come to the clinic or the emergency room, walang output manas o hypertensive. Okay? So you could request for an ultrasound. Kung hypertensive, especially for adolescent, pwede makita sa ultrasound na parang mayroong renal artery stenosis. So pwede yun. Ultrasound mo siya. Hypertensive ang pasyente mo eh. Hindi ba? So hindi lang dahil sa post-renal AKI, intrinsic pwede rin. Okay? O baka naman dumating na yung pasyente, pangit na. Pagka-ultrasound mo, virgin case to ha. Maliit na pala yung kidneys. So pag maliit na yung kidneys, definitely hindi mo siya i-label as acute kidney injury. Chronic na siya. So that way, you would know, hindi na ito acute, chronic na po siya. So these are just some of the advantages of doing an ultrasound, especially for severe cases of kidney injury. And lastly, of course, for renal biopsy. Renal biopsy would be more for glomerular diseases or your intrinsic AKI. Okay? And there are indications for doing a kidney biopsy. Kailangan mabilis eh, di ba? O how do we manage na? So nag-request ka na. Oh my God, sabi mo mukhang pre-renal to. Okay? Pero sa history pa lang, alam mo ng pre-renal, huwag mo namang hintayin pa yung CBC mo o yung mga laboratory mo bago ka mag-manage. Okay? If you more or less know that this is pre-renal, okay na. Okay? So how do you manage? So very important would be fluids. Okay? You could use your LR or your normal saline solution or whatever, because in some of the hospitals, especially in the rural areas, hindi naman siya very ideal na laging may LR, laging may normal saline solution. So kung anong nandoon, ibigay agad. Okay? How much of the fluids are you going to give? No? Initially, you could give around 10 to 20 cc per kilogram as IV bolus. Okay? Fast drip na siya. So, personally, I usually would start first at 10 cc per kilo. Fast rate of, if the patient weighs around 15 kilograms, times 10, that's 150 ml. Fast drip. Mga 5 minutes yung nag-drip. And then observe for 15 minutes. Ay, hindi pa rin umihim. Okay? Wala pa rin. Magbibigay uli ako ng another 10 cc. Tapos check ko ulit yung output. Ay, hindi pa rin siya umihim. Wala pa rin. Pangatlong 10 cc. Hanggang pang-apat. Kasi kung susumahin mo yun, that would be around 1 hour, 15 minutes interval yun. Okay? So after that, 4 na 10 cc, maximum 40 cc yan per kilo as IV bolus. Okay? Kung hindi siya nag-respond after yung pagbibigay natin ng 40 cc, nag-stop ka na, tama na. Okay? Just like what I mentioned earlier, baka hindi na siya pre-renal, intrinsic na siya. Okay? So management will be different. Magbibigay na ako ngayon ng diuretics. Kasi if I push ko pa rin yung another 10 cc, baka patient will be congested na to. Makita mo, biglang namaga yung mata, nagkaroon ng some breath sounds kasi nagkaroon ng fluid accumulation sa lungs. Pulmonary congestion. So you have to be very mindful of how much fluids are you giving to your patient. Meron nilang limit to because management will be different if the patient will not respond to your fluid bolus. Okay? So pre-renal and dali, bolus lang siya. Okay? Correct. Pagka bolus at gumanda, then maintain the fluids. Okay? Now, for intrinsic naman, this is what I'm telling you, this will be the other side of the story naman. Ang pasyente mo, pagpalingin mong na-overload, o sige, na-overload mo, hindi pa rin umihigit. O dumating ang pasyente, manas. Okay? Tapos ang history, nakuha nyo, you were able to get in the history na wala pa ng urine output ang pasyente mo. Okay? Again, please very, alert kayo. Hindi porke walang urine output, mag-IV bolus kayo. Hindi ba? Because for patients with pre-renal na walang urine output, ang blood pressure mo hypotensive. Pero ang pasyente mong manas, edematous, okay, hypertensive, walang urine output, hindi naman kayo mag-IV bolus dito. You know that the problem for patients with intrinsic could be overload, volume overload. For pre-renal, hypovolemia, depletion, dehydration. So you don't give IV bolus for patients with intrinsic AKI. So what we usually give is a diuretic. Okay. Kung yung pre-renal, ina-hydrate natin, ang intrinsic, dine-dehydrate naman natin yung patient by giving your diuretics. Of course, if ever these patients will not respond to your conventional treatment of diuretics, ang next stage will be dialysis. Okay? Pero sana huwag naman umabot doon. Okay? So, before going to the different diuretics or management of your patients with intrinsic, it is worth it to know that for patients, whether that will be pre-renal or intrinsic, hindi porke binigyan mo ng fluids yan, iwan mo na siya. Okay? You have to monitor your blood pressure, urine output. Very important will be the weight of your patient. Tinitimbang yan every day. Every day din or every hour din ang urine output. Okay? And blood pressure. You will encounter this when you become junior interns. Wala kayong ginawa kung dumikot ang hospital kung yung blood pressure. Mapapagod po talaga. Kaya dapat naka-rubber shoes po kayo. So up, down, okay? But of course, while getting the blood pressure, as young doctors said, you should know the reason why you're getting the blood pressure. Hindi yung pagka-blood pressure mo kahit na 80/60 na yan, lalabas ka na at wala kang gagawin. Okay? You have to know your patient. Ano bang kaso ito? Okay? Anong in-expect ko dito? Anong danger dito? Mag-hypertension o mag-hypertension? Because if there would be hypo or hypertension, definitely you have to refer them to the resident or the attending physician or even to the nurses. Hindi yung pagka-BP mo, labas na. Nagawa ko din. Kapag BP na, nakapag-record na. Not knowing na pangit na pala yung BP. Nag-deteriorate yung pasyente na hindi napansin. Okay? So, you should know why you are getting those vital signs sa mga pasyente. Okay? You know the case, you should know the case, and you should know the reason why you're getting the blood pressures and other vital signs. Anyway, so yung management ng intrinsic. One of the management would be your monitor. Okay? But this is not usually given. Okay? But it can be given in cases your furosemide is not available. So what would be the dose? Around 0.5 to 1 gram per kilogram. So what does it do? Yung tubules, intratubular, okay? It increases yung pressure itself para makaihi ang pasyente. Well, the downside of your monitor would be your hyperosmolality. Okay? Although aside from, of course, addressing the increased urine output, importante rin siya kasi it will act as scavengers for patients with free radicals. Remember, ang lahat na may sakit, mapakidney yan, heart yan, dumadami yung mga tinatawag na reactive oxygen species, mga free radicals. And mannitol, more or less, with the advantages with regards to the scavengers that will be present in patients with acute kidney injury. So aside from your mannitol, you also have your diuretic. Ito yung very famous loop diuretic, which is at a dose of 1 to 5 milligram per kilogram per dose. Per dose po ito. So aside from increasing the urine flow, okay, ang advantage din niya will be yung sodium potassium ATPase pump. Okay? Medyo nililimitahan niya yung activity ng sodium potassium ATPase pump. And when you limit such active transport system, yung oxygen consumption mo, okay, medyo ma-preserve din natin. Okay? So those are just some of the, anong tawag dito, advantages of your diuretic or your furosemide. But again, the downside of your furosemide, if you were able to give it so much, naging very aggressive ka. But again you could give your diuretic as much as every 4 or even 6 hours, depending upon the condition of your patient. Kung talaga hindi umihi, maximize ko yan every 4 hours at 1 milligram per kilo. So if your patient weighs 10 kilograms, you give 10 milligrams of your diuretic or furosemide every 4 or every 6 hours. You have to challenge the kidney to produce urine. Okay? Kasi, pero ang downside niya would be autotoxicity. Okay? Pero mas gusto ko ng bingin kaysa may renal failure. Okay? Mas mahal ata ang dialysis at transplant. Hearing aid na. Mura-mura. Mga 50,000 lang. Okay? Next would be your dopamine. Your dopamine is said to be, well, questionable yung dopamine na yan. Because wala talagang controlled study that would tell us the benefit or benefits of your dopamine. But of course, the idea that dopamine increases renal blood flow at a lower dose. Okay? At a dose of 0.5 to, of course, 5 microgram per kilogram. I'm sure, alam nyo na dopamine, binibigay yan doon sa mga panic ng blood pressure, di ba? Kaya mataas doon. You give it at 5 to 8. But for patients with no urine output, you give it at a low dose in order to increase or renal blood flow through vasodilation. Okay? When you're pushed against the wall, you bigyan pa ka rin ng dopamine. But ang primary management would be your diuretics. Okay? Now, another problem in patients with acute kidney injury would be your, sinabi natin, yung potassium. Okay? Hyperkalemia. And this hyperkalemia could be due to, well, a problem in the secretion of your potassium, filtration, of course, decreased filtration, increased catabolism. Okay? Remember that your potassium is the major intracellular cation. So kung mataas ang catabolic state o maraming cells na nasisira, pwedeng tumaas ang potassium. And of course, an altered in the condition, whether that would be alkalosis or acidosis. Metabolic acidosis would cause increased potassium level. Okay? So these are just some of the reasons why you would expect hyperkalemia in patients with AKI, specifically your intrinsic AKI. Now, I've mentioned that acidosis is said to be related to potassium level. And it is a rule that for every 0.1, take note, unit reduction in your arterial pH, in your arterial blood gas, there is a corresponding 0.3 milliequivalent increase in your potassium. Okay? So acidosis will lead to hyperkalemia. And, of course, in any cause, kung ano man ang dahilan, o underlying cause of your potassium or increased potassium level, this patient should be brought to the ICU and be attached to a cardiac monitor. Very important. Para alam natin, totoo ba itong hyperkalemia? Kasi may mga pseudo-hyperkalemia. And if there would be changes in your ECG findings, in your cardiac monitor, para ma-document, oh, this is a true hyperkalemia. Okay? And the very first, take note, okay? First findings, ECG findings, would be your tall peak T wave. Okay? Other findings like prolonged PR interval, flattening of the T wave, and the QRS complex, widening of the QRS complex are all findings in patients with hyperkalemia. But of course, the initial, take note again, will be the T wave. Tall peak T wave, which is the initial ECG findings of patients with hyperkalemia. Nakakatakot kasi baka magkaroon ng arrhythmia ang pasyente mo, and that could lead to salivary. That's why very important that you document that your patient has abnormalities in your potassium. Okay? This is true for both hypo and hyper-K. That, of course, hyper-K will be our topic for this morning. Mas dangerous na nga ito. Okay? That is why, as mentioned, you have to document first and foremost, ano bang symptoms ng hyper-K? Okay? If these symptoms are present, mukhang hyper-K. But, mataas ang potassium, hinuk mo sa cardiac monitor, normal naman. Okay? Think of a pseudo-hyperkalemia. Hyperkalemia. And this can be brought about by, of course, medyo nahihirapan kumuha ng dugo, kaya gumagano siya. No? Anong tawag ito? Nagsulse, no? Ano tawag dyan? O, pag nag-fishing, bago na pala. Fishing din sa Senado, di ba? May fishing din pala sa nag-fishing, nagsulsin. So traumatic yun. That could lead to a false hyperkalemia. And other causes like hemolysis dahil sa kakaano mo. Tapos, nung nilipat mo yung dugo, napabilis. That can cause hemolysis. Okay? And lastly, of course, for patients with high WBC. Okay? Di ba may nucleus yun? Next. Kasi intracellular potassium, kung mataas ang WBC, nasira ito, so tataas din ang potassium level. Now, how do we treat? Okay? If you are confronted, I'm sure nakikita nyo ito sa Facebook, di ba? May mga, natutuwa nga ako sa Facebook ngayon kasi may mga doktor o parang may lectures din, may scenario, even sa nurses, if you are confronted with a patient with a 7.5 milli equivalence of your potassium, what is the first thing that you're going to do? Di ba magandang tanong nito? Okay, may choices. Okay? So, there are drugs that, meron pa nga ako nakita yung, mas maganda na nakita ko, yung ECG changes na gano'n. Anyway, tol. Para mailagan. Anyway, hyperkalemia. So what will be the first drug that you're going to give? No? There are a lot of drugs that can be given. But what is important is that, alam mo yung mechanism of action. There are drugs that, one, would only cause shift of your potassium intracellularly. If that will be the case, wala talaga actual loss of your potassium. Ipinasok mo lang siya sa loob ng cell. Okay? May mga drugs naman that there would be an actual loss of your potassium. Yun ang maganda. At may mga drugs naman that has nothing to do with your actual loss or intracellular shift of potassium, but siya yung pinaka-importante. Why? Because this drug will stabilize the membrane potential. I'm sure you remember your physiology. Pag mataas ang potassium, excitable. And excitable, pag excitable yan, pwede mag-arrhythmia ang pasyente. At yun ang piniprevent natin for patients with hyperkalemia. That's why the first drug that you should give should be your calcium gluconate. Okay? Madalas yan lumalabas sa anumang exam, specialty exam, yung board exam, etc. Calcium gluconate. Okay? Then, of course, the dose will be around 0.5 to 1 ml per kilogram. Pero ito, you should give it slow lang, mga 5 to 15 minutes mo siya ibibigay intravenously. So again, it stabilizes the membrane potential. So less excitable siya to prevent your arrhythmia. At maganda, mabilis ang action. Once you are able to give your calcium gluconate, then you could give now drugs that would apparently shift your potassium intracellularly. And these are your sodium bicarbonate. Ang maganda sa sodium bicarbonate, na-address mo na yung hyperkalemia, na-address mo pa ang metabolic acidosis. Okay? But of course, you have to be very careful in giving so much of your sodium bicarbonate because that can also lead to an increase in your sodium or hypernatremia. Another drug that can be given that will shift your potassium intracellularly would be your insulin. Insulin should always be given together with your glucose in the management of patients with hyperkalemia on the premise na patient may go into hypoglycemia because of the insulin. At tinitreat ko nga lang hyperkalemia nagkaroon pa ako ng hypoglycemia if not given together with glucose. That's why it should be given together with glucose. Okay? Next would be, of course, your beta agonists. Yung mga salbutamol, ninebulize mo. No? Pero not so much of those beta agonists kasi baka naman manginig ng pasyente mo na overdose ka na. Kasi sabi ni Dr. Abate, ibigay mo lang ito na ito. Para potassium pumasok sa loob. Pumasok ka sa loob, nanginig ka naman na overdose ka. Okay? So that you should know, of course, the side effect of each of the drugs. Knowing the mechanism of action and the side effects. So temporary lang itong tatlong to. Glucose and insulin, beta agonist, and of course your bicarbonate. Temporary lang yan, pinasok mo na yung potassium. So una, yung membrane, in-stabilize mo by giving your calcium gluconate. Tapos kung available to mga insulin, kasi ito readily available sa hospital din, beta agonist, insulin, and your bicarbonate. So pwede mo ibigay. Mahirap kasing hanapin itong Kayexalate, if not available. This Kayexalate is the only drug for hyperkalemia that could lead to an actual loss or excretion of your potassium. Okay? And usually, this is given per rectum. Pwedeng oral, pero syempre hindi kasarapan, per rectum na lang. The mechanism of action of which is that it would stimulate your sodium-potassium ATPase pump in your colonic area. Okay? Sodium is reabsorbed, potassium is secreted. There is actual loss. But of course, before giving your Kayexalate, you have to have your baseline sodium level because you are enhancing sodium reabsorption at the level of the colon. Okay? So the fear of hypernatremia can also happen in this case when you give your Kayexalate. Okay? So this is given per rectum. Now, I mentioned about acidosis, and we mentioned about the giving of your sodium bicarbonate. How much of the bicarbonates are you going to give? That will be at a dose of 1 to 2 milliequivalents per kilo. Okay? And that is said to be diluted with equal amounts of D5 water or normal saline solution and should be given for around 30 minutes. This is your sodium bicarbonate. Not so much in the giving of your bicarbonates na mabilis. Hindi pwedeng mabilis ang tawag dito. Pagbibigay ng bicarbonates. Why? Because it can lead to seizure or tetany or convulsion. Okay? Bakit nga ba dapat slowly binibigay ang bicarbonate? Okay? It has something to do with calcium metabolism. Okay? Pag mabilis mong naibigay yung bicarbonate, what happens is that your calcium will be bound to your protein. Remember, yung biologically active calcium natin, these are unbound sa protein. When you give your bicarbonate na mabilis, magiging bounded sila sa protein. So nawala yung biologically active and that could lead to seizures or even convulsion. That's why very, dapat very slow, okay? Ang giving of your bicarbonates. Okay? Ito yung sinasabi natin kanina. Okay, how about your hypocalcemia? Although, of course, your hypocalcemia will be mostly seen in patients with chronic disease, chronic kidney disease. This can also be seen temporarily in patients with acute kidney injury. Although, of course, the reason why you have your hypocalcemia will be multifactorial, but of course, basically, it has something to do with the GI calcium metabolism or absorption. That would lead to hypocalcemia. The problem with patients with AKI, meron kang hypocalcemia, pero reverse ang nangyayari sa phosphate. Hyperphosphatemia naman ang nangyayari dyan. And if this would, of course, sabi nga natin, although this is usually seen in patients with chronic kidney disease, okay? Of course, pag chronic, prolonged na yan. And a lot of complications can happen if your calcium and your phosphates are said to be, well, calcium depleted and phosphates increased. A lot of mechanisms will be altered, di ba? And one of which would be, of course, yung mga stimulation of your parathyroid hormone sa chronic niya. Okay? Next. Of course, if you have hypocalcemia, very important that you give a supplement that would address your hypocalcemia. You give your calcium. Basically, it's your calcium carbonate. Okay, maraming type ng calcium, di ba? But calcium carbonate would be ideal on the premise that hindi lang niya nire-replenish yung calcium itself, but it also has its action to your phosphate, which is said to be increased. Your phosphate absorption in the GIP is said to be decreased when you give your calcium carbonate. Kaya sa lahat ng klase ng calcium, it is your calcium carbonate that is usually given in patients with acute kidney injury. Okay? Before, we are using yung mga phosphate binders, no? Para ma-eliminate yung excess phosphates natin. Okay? But of course, these phosphate binders usually would contain your aluminum. And aluminum is said to be neurotoxic. That's why we shy away in giving these phosphate binders containing your aluminum. Okay? Di ba yan yung mga aluminum magnesium, yung mga maalox na yan? Okay yan for short courses. No? But para i-maintain mo siya, that is said to be neurotoxic. Okay? Now, another problem would be your hyponatremia. Very common in patients with pre-renal. So, very important that you should know how to replenish or replace the loss of your sodium. But, very important first, that you have to qualify whether this is a delusional type of hyponatremia or a true hyponatremia. Okay? Kanina may nabanggit ako delusional anemia. Meron din delusional hyponatremia, which is usually seen in patients with post-strep or post-infectious glomerulonephritis. Okay? Kasi sa glomerulonephritis, just to give you an idea, what happens is that there is also a decrease in the glomerular filtration rate. What happens is that nagkakaroon ng problem with regards sa oncotic and hydrostatic pressure. Hydrostatic pressure increases. Okay? That's why you have your edema in patient with post-strep glomerulonephritis. And that increase in the hydrostatic pressure causing your edema could also be the reason why you have your delusional hyponatremia. So very important that before correction, alam mo talaga na talagang this is a true hyponatremia. So let's start. What would be the normal level of your sodium? Around 135 to 145. 130, okay pa yan. Okay? But basically, yung severe wherein you would see symptoms would be less than 120 milliequivalents. Nakakatakot na po siya. And of course, regardless if that would be hyponatremia o hypernatremia, ang symptoms niya lagi CNS. Okay? So medyo, it's either na-convulsion siya o hindi maganda yung sensorium niya for patients with hyponatremia. So, how do we treat? Okay. So yung 125 na yan, so the number of milliequivalents to be administered, to be given as replacement, okay, will be 125. That, ano yan ha, that can be changed to 2130, depende yan sa baseline na sodium ninyo. Okay? Sabi nga, that 125 corresponds to yung estimated level of increase na gusto mo sa pasyente mo. Okay? Bakit? You don't have to, just like your sodium bicarbonate in the management of acidosis, yung sodium din in the management of hyponatremia should not be given as a bolus or should not be given very fast or rapid correction. In fact, the correction of your sodium should take place in 24 hours. Ganon siya kabagal. Kasi it has a side effect. No? It can lead to osmotic demyelination. Okay? Dati ang tawag namin dyan, ito, central pontine myelinolysis. Yun yung old term. But of course, the new term right now is your osmotic demyelination syndrome. Okay? This is brought about by fast correction of your sodium. Kaya mabagal. Okay? That's why yung 125, yan yung ano mo. That's not the, I forgot the term, but yan yung gusto mong level muna, initial level. Pwedeng coming from 120. Okay? So, after 24 hours, ang gusto kong level, 125. Hindi kagad 130, masyadong mabilis. No? Dahan-dahan. From 120 to 125. So, that would be the estimated increase na gusto mo. And then you have to subtract it by your actual serum sodium. So, like for example, if the actual serum sodium is 120, so 125 minus 120. And then you multiply it by the weight in kilograms, and of course 0.6, which is the volume of your sodium distribution. Whatever amount, okay, or milliequivalents that you will be getting there, okay, you should add, like for example, ang na-compute mo dyan, 30 milliequivalents. Okay? For you to reach your 125, 130. Yun yung replacement. You have to add your replacement therapy to your maintenance therapy. And what is your maintenance therapy? Your maintenance is 2 to 4 milliequivalents per kilo. So kung ang pasyente nyo ay 50 kilos times 2, yun ang gusto ko, 100 milliequivalents yun. Plus, whatever yung na-compute rito for the deficit or replacement. So, deficit plus maintenance. So, how are you going to go about? Kung ano man yung na-compute nyo, okay? 50% of what you were able to compute will be given during the first 8 hours. 50%. And the remaining 50% will be given with the succeeding 16 hours for a total of 24-hour correction. So that's how you treat or you replace your sodium. Basta 50%, first 8 hours, another 50%, the remaining 16 hours. So mabagal talaga ang correction. Okay? Next, how about your medication? We mentioned this earlier with regards to yung mga aminoglycosides natin. Okay? But of course, a lot of your medication are said to be metabolized in your kidneys. Okay? Hindi ko siya ma-memorize kasi ang daming gamot yan. But there's a table, there's a book, okay? Wherein these medications, regardless if that would be antibiotics or even pain relievers or any antibiotic or any drugs for that matter, meron yung nakalagay, drugs. And then, may table yan. Because you have to compute for the estimated glomerular filtration rate based on the serum creatinine. Kunyari, for example, aminoglycoside ang binigay ko. And then, you were able to take note na yung creatinine level niya ang taas, 150 o 200. Okay? So, Now you can compute your estimated GFR. Whatever your estimated GFR is, like for example, if that would be less than 50, less than 30, less than 10%, may table yan. And then the table would say, for example, aminoglycoside and gentamicin, there are two ways of adjusting the medication. It's either that you lower the dose based on the GFR computed. Okay? May mga ano yun. Like for example, if the GFR is less than 30 ml, okay? Sasabihin doon sa table, you decrease the dose by 50%. If the dose is 5 to 8, so you decrease mo siya ng 50%. Okay? It's either you decrease the dose or ang tatargetin mo yung frequency. Like for example, if your gentamicin is given every 12 hours, but based on the estimated GFR, nakalagay doon sa table that you should give your gentamicin every 72 hours. So may ganun. It's either you decrease the frequency or decrease the therapeutic dose when you do renal adjustment based on the estimated GFR. So again, how do you compute? That would be K, constant yun, length, of course length in centimeters, and the plasma creatinine in milligram per deciliter. Depende kung milligram or millimoles, no? Why? Because, kasi these are, ano yan, old computation for what would be the K value. Yung bago na ngayon, para mas madali, would be this. If your creatinine is in milligram per deciliter, the K value would be at 0.4. Pag millimoles, that would be 36.5. So yan yung K times L, di ba? Okay. Over your plasma creatinine. Okay? That would be your estimated GFR. Now, so again, I would like to emphasize it's either you decrease the dose or decrease the frequency. Okay? Now, I won't talk about hypertension because you were able to take, may lecture na kayo ng hypertension, di ba? Okay. But of course, yung mga most common antihypertensive drug given for patients with acute kidney injury, pwedeng mga amlodipine, okay? Mga, kawawa naman ang pediatric nephrology kasi parang akala ng mga, well, akala nyo hindi binibigyan antihypertensive ang mga bata, hindi ba? But children are also given antihypertensive drugs, okay? May mga calcium channel blockers, okay? You could give also your ACE inhibitors. But again, di ba sa ACE inhibitors, sabi sa lecture, hindi mo siya ibibigay sa mga pasyenteng may renal artery stenosis. Hindi ba? Why? Kasi, i-dilate niya both the afferent and afferent arteriole. So pag dinilate na pareho, ang GFR mo, gusto ko babagsak. Di ba? Papunta sa renal artery stenosis ka na, nabigay ka pa ng calcium, ng ACE inhibitor. Renal failure ka. I'm sorry for that. Okay? So you have to, that's why ultrasound is very important. Basta may hypertension ang pasyente. Okay? Nutritional support, you're done with, di ba? With, sa nutrition, sa biochemistry, di ba meron yan? Renal nutrition. But for pediatric patients kasi, with regards to protein regulation, hindi ganun ka-strict. We usually would maintain it at 1 to 1.2 grams per kilo. Okay? On the premise that we don't want to compromise protein intake of patients who would need protein for their growth. Hindi. Okay? So, ang madalas na what we usually would control or, would be your electrolytes, your sodium definitely, for patients, especially for patients with acute kidney injury. But proteins, not much because we don't want to compromise the growth of the patient. Okay? Now, when we talk about renal replacement therapy, we are talking about dialysis, whether that will be peritoneal or your hemoperfusion or hemodialysis. Okay? before, during our, baka hindi pa kayo pinapanganak. What would be more, we usually would do more of the peritoneal dialysis rather than the hemodialysis. Okay, primarily, wala pang masyadong machine that is compatible with for children. If I remember it rightly, the youngest that we did a hemodialysis was an 8-year-old male with systemic lupus erythematosus. Okay, but this was after peritoneal dialysis. We shift him to hemodialysis dahil lagi siya nagkakaroon ng peritonitis or infection. That is the downside of your peritoneal dialysis. Okay, but now because of course, marami ng machines ngayon that will be compatible with children, we usually would advocate giving your hemodialysis or your hemoperfusion. And these are just some of the indications. It's as simple as lahat po ng sinabi natin, manifestation and management. But pag lahat po ito to no avail, hindi ko siya makorek ang hyponatremia, hindi ko makorek ang hyperkalemia, hindi ko makorek ang acidosis, tumataas ang creatinine ko, nagkukumbulsyon na po ang pasyente ko, iba na ang sense organ ng pasyente ko, then I would do renal replacement. Okay? Take note that your creatinine level is, kahit na mataas yan, hindi naman agad-agad magkakaroon ng changes in sensorium. Okay? There are patients that are used to increase creatinine, especially for patients with chronic kidney disease. Kasi may mga ibang pasyente naman na hindi naman kataasan ng creatinine pero nagkukumbulsyon na. So it's a case-to-case basis. And this usually happens in acute kidney injury. Sabi ko nga, kung nakapag-adjust na yung katawan mo na mataas ang creatinine mo, so pwedeng hindi ka kaagad magkaroon ng mga changes in sensorium. Okay? Of course, the prognosis of the acute AKI will all depend on the underlying cause and how you manage your patients. Okay? But kung pre-renal, mataas naman ang chances of recovery. The problem is for patients with intrinsic, wherein it could be due to drugs, it could be due to glomerulonephritis. Wherein, pag sinabi mong glomerular diseases kasi, it's a chronic condition. Okay? Take note that a glomerular disease, for example, ang diagnosis ko ngayon is post-infectious glomerulonephritis. Okay? These patients are said to be monitored because a glomerular disease is a continuously evolving disease. Ang diagnosis ko ngayon ng post-infectious or Henoch-Schönlein glomerulonephritis pwedeng maging maiba after a year or two. So this patient should be monitored. Okay, glomerular disease is a continuously evolving disease. Okay?